Hey there, hope you're doing super well. My name is Connor. I'm a life coach and been trained in internal family systems. I am answering the question in this video, who is IFS therapy actually good for? I will give a generic answer and then I'll give a more specific answer based on my personal experience. The generic answer is that IFS is good for everyone. Let me tell you why this is. I've been studying different therapeutic modalities for about a decade, and I've been in this field of work for about a decade. So I've worked with a lot of different people. I've read a lot of books. I've gone to a lot of seminars. I've taken a lot of courses so that I can be a better coach. And I genuinely think that IFS is the best modality out there for individuals to use on themselves. I think it's a fantastic therapeutic modality for therapists to use on clients, no doubt about it. And as a coach, I use IFS as a backdrop to a lot of the work that I do. But when it comes to empowering a client, whether you're, a therapist or a coach, IFS couldn't be better. And when it comes to empowering yourself, I think IFS is really standalone. And the reason for this is there are simple practices in there that really prevent the individual from overdoing it. And one of those is you go as slow as the slowest part of your system needs to. So there's never any forcing, and there's never there shouldn't be anything that is overwhelming to you that you can't slow down on your own. Now, it's not to say that this is just the way it is across the board. I'm sure that some therapists have overwhelmed their clients and gone too fast. And I'm sure that some individuals have overwhelmed themselves and gone too fast. But if you follow the IFS protocols appropriately, you should be able to go quite slow enough that you're not getting into any territory that's going to be dangerous for you, emotionally or otherwise. The other thing that I love about IFS is how much it's focused on developing self-awareness. There's two different ways of kind of understanding self-awareness. One is the general understanding of self-awareness, which I will discuss, and one is specific to IFS. So the general one, self-awareness, I'm sure you've heard of, but it really couldn't be understated as how important developing self-awareness is. You really can't know your needs, your wants, or your boundaries unless you are self-aware. So if you don't have those things, if you don't know your needs, your wants, or your boundaries, you aren't going to know a direction for yourself. You aren't going to know how to ask for what you need or want. You're not going to be able to identify why you may become overwhelmed or triggered. You may be getting into unhealthy relationships and not understand that they're unhealthy. You may be engaged in unhealthy practices and maybe have a sense that they're unhealthy, but not really an understanding of why you do it or how to actually change it. So all of that stuff, in order to have a positive relationship with, one has to have self-awareness. And IFS definitely promotes self-awareness in a whole different way than any other modality can. So self-awareness, when it comes to IFS, there's another way of looking at it. Self in IFS is a place that we look for in order to lead our system from. This space in other modalities may be called presence or mindfulness. The 3 C's, there's actually 8, but I always tell people 3 that are most important is calm, curious, and compassionate. So if you're developing a place of self that's calm, curious, and compassionate, self-awareness. You are aware of self-energy. And if you can be aware of self-energy and actually what that means in your own system, you can identify when you are in it, when you are out of it, or when you're blended with it and some other parts. And if you can do that, well, you just empowered yourself in a whole other way. So in general, self-awareness is good for every human being, and IFS definitely helps develop self-awareness. There's a lot of other things that IFS is good for, but I really think self-awareness is number one. which is why it's a good thing for everyone to try on. Now, when it comes to my personal experience, I have worked with a lot of different types of people. Me personally, I've come from a background of depression, anxiety, and addictive behavior. So I can speak on a very personal level that IFS completely changed my relationship in understanding depression, anxiety, and addictive behavior in my system. And by understanding it, I could develop compassion for it. By developing compassion for it, I could help those parts that are engaged in that type of feeling, behavior, or thoughts to naturally and organically shift, to integrate back into the system, whereas otherwise they've always been kind of pushed out because I just am sitting with the judgment of I shouldn't be depressed, I shouldn't be anxious, I shouldn't have addictive behavior, I don't like these things, I want them to go away. IFS says, hey, I see that. I see you. Come closer. Let's talk about it. I want to understand more about why you're feeling depressed or anxious or why you're showing up with these addictive manifestations. So, for me personally, it was a total life-changing experience when I found IFS in 2013. It changed my life so much that I decided to get trained in it and then make this my line of work, which is just helping other people become more self-aware, self-empowered, and self-actualized, and I absolutely love it. In addition to this work that I've done with me, I've done very similar work with other people around those three things: depression, anxiety, and addictive behavior. Now, addictive behavior is an interesting one because there are some very clear forms of addictive behavior, right? Alcoholism, drug addiction, smoking cigarettes. Like, we are all aware, like, oh, that's an addiction. But what we're less aware of is that actually most people have some kind of addictive behavior. And it can be moderate or it can be severe. It can be somewhere in between. Workaholism is a real thing in our culture. And I would say that many people have an addictive tendency towards overworking or to producing. Now, if you had to judge that against, say, a heroin addiction, you would probably choose the workaholism. But that doesn't mean that the root cause isn't coming from a very similar place. And in either case, both need to be looked at, loved, and integrated into the system so that they can function more wholly. There's nothing wrong with working and loving being productive, but a lot of people that I've worked with, they're not really loving their work. They do it because they're escaping being with themselves. And so this is a very common form of addictive behavior. Eating disorders, manifestations of disordered eating, those are also forms of addictions. There are forms of addictions that have to do with sex, pornography, video games, YouTube, all sorts of stuff, exercise. So when it comes to working with individuals through the IFS model, I have worked with a lot of different people who've exhibited some form of addictive behavior, and I found it incredibly useful. Depression and anxiety, maybe this is part of your repertoire of parts, perhaps not, but as you probably know, a lot of people do suffer with a depressed part or anxious parts, and IFS can definitely help those parts for sure. So in my line of work, I tend to work with people who want to make big changes in their life, and they are probably having multiple challenges in addition to the challenge of wanting to make change but feeling like they're unable to do so. However, these challenges are not typically extreme. So I don't work with individuals who are fundamentally considering suicide on a daily basis, or perhaps self-harming to the point where there's serious concern. People who maybe have identified or have been labeled as multiple personality or schizophrenic or even bipolar. That doesn't tend to be the type of clientele that I work with. So I don't want to speak to those things and say, yeah, IFS is great for those things as well. My assumption is that it would be great for literally everything. However, there's a big difference in the type of IFS work that I encourage and the type of IFS work that you're going to get with a trained professional therapist with a psychology or psychiatry degree. So the type of work that I am excited about encouraging people to do is IFS work that you control, that you do on yourself, that you are your own therapist for. And I think that this is a really worthwhile thing for most people to engage in. I would be a little bit less encouraging to those who may be experiencing extreme versions of parts. And some of those things are what I just named. Some of them I haven't named and you could probably make up. So if this is you, I wouldn't necessarily encourage you to jump into doing IFS work on your own. I would encourage you to find an IFS practitioner or someone who is a good psychologist or psychiatrist who has an understanding of IFS and who can work in some of those protocols. So who is IFS good for? Most likely it's good for everyone. Who is IFS self-therapy good for? Most likely it's good for most people. I hope that is helpful. I really hope that this channel in general helps you learn a lot more about internal family systems and other self-led therapeutic modalities, tricks, and exercises that you can use on your own. If you want more, please check out internalfamilysystems.org, and we have a lot of wonderful stuff over there. I hope you have a beautiful day. We'll talk to you soon.